Hello again everyone, and today I'm testing out a lens that's a recent update to a favourite lens of many Fuji fans, the Fuji XF 10-24mm f4 R OIS WR. It is sometimes known as the Mark II version of their 10-24mm lens, but you can also tell if it's this newer version by whether it has the WR designation. It is only for Fuji's X system cameras, and its focal range of 10-24mm is the full frame equivalent of about 15-36mm, so that gives you fantastically wide angles as well as quite a broad zoom range. This could be one heck of a useful lens for all kinds of photography. Its price is $1,000 or £900 here in the UK. This Mark II or WR version of the lens has the same optics as Fuji's original 10-24mm f4, but there are a few improvements to the design of the lens's body. It's weather sealed now, which is especially useful as landscape photographers will be taking this thing out in all kinds of different weather conditions. It's also a little smaller and lighter and looks a little more stylish, and also its image stabilization is meant to be considerably improved. Here is some footage at 24mm without stabilization, and here it is turned on. As you can see, it's working very nicely, although admittedly, image stabilization is hardly a critical feature on an ultra-wide angle lens. A minor disadvantage of this new version of the lens is that you have to turn that image stabilization on and off in your camera's menu. There's no longer a switch on the lens itself. Generally speaking though, this is an absolutely gorgeous lens to handle, one of my favourites that Fujifilm have ever made, honestly. A lot of it is made of metal, it's small, tough but not heavy, weighing only 385 grams, alongside the fact that it has a front filter ring that makes it a brilliant choice for landscape shooters. The lens's aperture ring features nice, gentle clicks at every third of an f-stop, and unlike the original lens, the numbers of those f-stops are actually marked on the ring, and it can also be locked in and out of automatic mode for those who don't want to use it. Above that comes the rubberized zoom ring. It turns very smoothly, although with just a little stickiness as you start to turn it. A strange issue I found is that when zooming the lens in and out, you see strong fluctuations in exposure, as the lens seems to correct itself of some unknown exposure issue, probably related to the aperture mechanism, I don't know. This is the case despite the lens having a constant maximum aperture, and even if all your settings are properly in place to stop any automatic exposure changes. Bizarre and potentially irritating for video makers. The lens's focus ring is made of metal. It turns extremely smoothly and precisely, although the way the focus motor actually responds to it is a little jerky. Some good news though is that the lens displays very little focus breathing whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out. The lens's autofocus motor is silent, quick and accurate, as you can see here. Although again, snappy autofocus hardly tends to be the most important feature on an ultra-wide angle lens. As I mentioned, this lens allows you to fit filters to the front, which is awesome considering it has such a wide angle. The filter size is 72mm, and you can mount at least one quite thick filter on there before any kind of vignetting becomes visible. The lens comes with a plastic hood. Overall, this lens's build quality is addictively good. It truly is a thing of beauty. Weather sealed, metallic, lightweight, with excellent autofocus and stabilization. I don't like that bizarre exposure jumping when zooming in and out though. Anyway, on to image quality. I'll be testing this thing on a Fuji X-T3 camera with its 24MP aps-c sized sensor. At the widest angle of 10mm and at f4, we right away see excellent sharpness and contrast in the middle of the image. Corner image quality is much softer here, but it's still holding together just barely. f5.6 and f8 see very tiny improvements in sharpness, but that is as sharp as the corners of this lens get at 10mm. Stop down as far as f16 and they get considerably softer again due to the effects of diffraction. Let's zoom into 16mm now. At f4, once again, we see excellent sharpness and contrast in the middle. The corner image quality this time is only a little less sharp. However, once again, stopping down the lens even to f8 doesn't seem to bring about much extra sharpness. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 24mm. At f4, once again, in the middle, we see very good image quality, but also a much softer picture in the corners. Once again, stopping down even as far as f8 or f11 doesn't bring any real improvement. So, mixed feelings here about this lens's optics. It's always really sharp in the middle, but those image corners do really quite struggle, and most of the time stopping down the aperture doesn't seem to help, so that's not great on an ultra-wide angle lens. By the way, my findings here have been pretty much in line with Fuji's own published MTF charts for the lens. Well, anyway, let's move on and look at distortion and vignetting. These pictures were taken in RAW to get around Fuji's automatic corrections. At 10mm, barrel distortion is rather strong, and there's some notable vignetting, darkness in the corners. Stop down to f5.6 and those corners get a bit brighter. Zoom in to 14mm and that distortion mostly straightens out. Zoom all the way in to 24mm and it flips into a mild pincushion distortion, but vignetting is still quite low. Basically, if you're shooting in RAW, you will particularly want to correct your images if you're shooting at 10mm. This lens can focus down to about 24cm, which is very good for getting close-up shots of smaller subjects. At 24mm and f4, we see excellent sharpness, but contrast is a bit lower, with a touch of blue colour fringing. Stop down to f5.6 to see perfect image quality in the middle, making a return. Now, let's see how the lens works against bright lights. At the widest angles, as you can see, flaring is very low, almost invisible. Zoom in and it picks up just a little bit, but still, contrast remains really high, so that's a great result. While we're working in the dark, let's look at chroma levels. At f4, bright points of light in the image corners see just a little smearing. Stop down to f5.6 and it's greatly reduced. Let's zoom out a bit and look for sun stars now. They begin to emerge at f8, getting more defined at f11 or f16, although they're not enormous in size. And finally, let's have a look at the quality of this lens's bokeh. An ultra-wide-angle f4 lens should be just about the last place to look for out-of-focus backgrounds, but when you do get them, those backgrounds look just averagely smooth. There's a little muddle in there, but they are quite soft. Overall, well, I really loved this ultra-wide-angle lens actually because it's so much fun with its stabilization, wide zoom range and awesome build quality. The stumbling block for many people though will be that lack of sharpness in the image corners, which is a serious problem on an ultra-wide-angle lens. The lens's optics are a little old now, and what was acceptable on a 16 megapixel camera seems to be a little weak on a 26 megapixel one. What I'm saying is that if you want the world's most enjoyable ultra-wide-angle zoom lens, which handles particularly well for landscape photography, then this is it, and it's a blast, and I can recommend it to you. If, however, you're on the market for critical corner sharpness, then look elsewhere. Gah, I can't wait to look in the comment section on this one. Things tend to erupt a little if I criticise a popular lens. If you're one of the few people not offended by this review and still watching, and in fact you've been finding these videos helpful, then do check out my Patreon page down in the description below. There you will find all kinds of bonus content for my generous supporters. Ciao for now.